Hi, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvelously well. I'm here with the great Dave Pensado.
Hey man, good to see you again.
I knew you were going to laugh or be modest about that.
It's false humility. I do have a big ego.
Well, you know, in this business, you've got to have a lot of self-belief, let's be honest. You know.
Yeah, I got this philosophy that if your ego equals your talent, you won't grow. If your ego is less than your talent, you'll shrink. If your ego is 30% bigger than your talent, you won't grow. There's a spot between 0 and 30 that your ego has to exceed in order for exceed your talent by in order for you to grow. So for me, it's about 10, 15%. That keeps me growing.
And how do you measure it?
That's the beauty. I get to do it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to be honest. I mean, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I became a bigger
thanks.
fan when you just mixed something for me.
Oh, thank you so much. It was you're being way too kind. It was recorded really extremely well, which you did, and the roadmap to completion was just so clear. It was. I won't call it an easy mix, but if it were a journey, I wouldn't have made any wrong turns. It was. I went straight to the destination. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
The kind of detail that you do, I think, is unbelievably unique, and I've used everybody. I mean, I don't want to compare apples and oranges and stuff like that, but, you know, I've been blessed to work with many, many people. And your mix, the subtlety in it is what makes all the difference for me.
Oh, thanks. I do spend a lot of time on things that don't count, except to me and cats like you that can hear the difference. But why not, you know? I mean, we're making pop music, and there's a disposable quality to pop music, but that doesn't mean you can't make the best pop music or try to make the best pop music out there. And it is in the details. It's in the emotional details. It's in the vibe details. And you just want to give the listener a 4-minute journey and 4 minutes of forgetting all the problems in their life and 4 minutes of just hitting them over the head with sledgehammers. Because I do have a lot of not so subtle things in my work too.
Right.
But the subtle things, the cumulative effect can be kind of a neat thing. And thank you for giving me the time to do that, because on some projects, you just don't get enough time to get in the cracks and do those things. And two advantages with your project: some projects have varying degrees of non-creative work involved with them. And so you can spend half your time just getting the mix ready to mix on a creative level. But yours I didn't have to do any of that. So I was able to spend, you gave me extra time, quite a bit of extra time. And then also the time that I would normally spend trying to get the mix ready to mix was minimal, if any at all. So that really helps too.
What I loved most was you weren't afraid to make bold steps. I mean, I gave you a lot of backgrounds, and in my rough mix, it was huge, it was monstrous, and all that kind of stuff. And when it came back, you completely dealt with it in a different way. You made the background so it was hooky, and it's super, super hooky, but you didn't dominate the lead vocal. And I didn't realize that my lead vocal had been dominated by backgrounds until I heard your mix.
There's a couple of things. Thank you for the compliment. What I try to do is create an image where I'm on stage and with the singer, so the backgrounds were perfect. But what I did is I used a plugin called Center and a little bit of MS techniques on top of that to remove some of the information from the center, not remove it completely, but treat it different sonically. So EQ wise, I had a spot for the vocalist to shine and be the star.
Wonderful.
And I always try to think, okay, what's the element that I'm trying to sell here? If it's a cheeseburger, I'm selling the beef. If it's a BLT, I'm selling the bacon. So the greatest bread in the world, you got to be careful because you don't want to overpower the bacon, you know. And so I tried to make Daniel the star, and and so we took a little bit of the top end off of the middle part of the vocal. We took a little bit of the mid range, and we left a little bit of the frequencies below Daniel, and then. Another thing that a lot of people don't consider is we all hear a song that's 10 years old. We know it's 10 years old. Well, a neat thing to do in our profession is to figure out what was it that I heard that made me know it was 10 years old, so that I can make my mix now sound like it belongs in this decade.
Sure.
And one of the things for me is when backgrounds get too wide now, they feel a little 90s to me. So, I brought not all the backgrounds in, but I brought the lower notes more towards the center, and the higher notes I left them a little wider. So that kind of gives it a impression that it's a little more modern.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that by itself doesn't sell any records, but you do that a few hundred times, and you might get an advantage. And plus, man, that's Daniel. Daniel wrote another Bad Day.
Song.
That song's incredible. Everybody that hears it first listen just loves that song.
Well, I think that the detail is very evident in the mix, and it was a unique experience for me to hear something that was essentially pretty simple, where I gave you not the hugest amount of instruments, lots of backgrounds, as we were saying earlier, but you keep the interest going the whole way. And that's, without using any kind of generic tricks. Like, it's easy to come in and put some big rake guitars on the end and a high driving line, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. But to take just the elements and base it around essentially a piano and a vocal and acoustics, with minimal instrumentation, you really brought it to life.
Thank you. The hardest thing, I think, from a mix engineer is to understand the vision from the creators. And when you have two visions, like say, if the producer's vision is different than the artist's, that's so tough because now you're compromising, and non-commitment and compromising are the evil twins of the creative world. Yeah, they'll kill you. So a clear vision by one person, then our job is to execute the final part of that vision.
Sure.
Now 10 years ago, my job was to take that vision and add my mix to it. Now my job is to take that vision and finish the mix part of that vision. So it's our profession is inherently completely different now, but the beauty is, recall, I asked you to just give me the session where you left off, and so I had a lot of your ideas already built into the mix before I even started. So I got to finish that vision, and you and Daniel shared a vision, so that made it even easier too. When we were all working in the room together, there was rarely a time when there was disagreement between you two.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that makes it a lot easier. By the way, I don't know if this. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't know. I don't know if this has any. I don't know if this is germane to the conversation, but my mom, who was a gifted musician, when she was teaching me guitar, and I'd play all these technical fast things, she'd go, all you're becoming is just a great typist. You're not saying anything with your typing skills, and I think in engineering sometimes we are seduced by becoming great typists.
Sure.
But until we actually type a great mix, the typing skills have no value. So taste is what we really sell at the end of the day. And if you don't have the technical skills to get that taste to come out of the speakers, then you're in trouble. But if you have only the technical skills and can't get any of your taste to come out of the speakers, you're in trouble. It's a wonderful, wonderful profession because it's one of the few things in life where you can use all your influences. You can go back to your birth and bring some of those things in,
That's wonderful.
And then all the heartache, all the pain, all the girlfriends that stomped your heart out, you can bring all that to the profession. And then if you're like us, you enjoy the technical part of it too, and you can get as deep as you want. You can write your own software, you can build your own gear, you can do whatever you want. And what other profession can you do that in? It's pretty rare.
And only in arts-based professions.
Yeah.
And this is an art.
There's some art to it. A lot of craft.
Yep.
A little bit of art.
You brought a lot of art to it. I was pretty blown away. I mean, I've been a fan of yours for years. As we were joking about, when Beautiful came out, we were like, I was making a record, and we're like, oh, what? And it was good, because it brought me back to the moment. Because the music I love, and I know the music you love, is all the passion. It's all, you connect emotionally to great music. And Beautiful was a song standing in the middle of a field that actually did that. Probably at that period, it was Pro Tools crazy at those days. And I'm not trying to be negative about Pro Tools or any DAW, but records at that point were at the strongest point of using all of the technical tools.
Yeah, very hybrid.
Yeah, and you that song came in and just kind of middle fingered that whole process. It did. It was a massive hit, but it was all about the vocal
I wish
performance.
I could see that. It was. You just
I think
can't.
everybody in this room can see that. It came out. It was all about the vocal performance. The vocal was
100%
shown
about
off.
the vocal.
But you showed the vocal off, and you made it. The song was just. We were sitting there going, "Oh God, we've got to redo our drums." Listen to McLeod. He's just going, "That," and we're like.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're like trying to be all clever with groove and stuff, and we're like, oh, this drum beat's so simple.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Brian about it, who's a friend of mine afterwards. He's like, yeah, I was just went in there and did it. And,
Wow.
And I was like, ah.
You know what? That was a special song for me because Linda Perry and Christina and I, we were in some ways all a little bit underdogs. We all had enjoyed success, but we all wanted the next level. And we probably put a little excess pressure on each other. And Linda was the ringleader, and Linda Perry. And if I recall, the first mix I did probably wasn't exactly the best mix. And I was given a lot of patience to finally get there. And all we kept thinking about, I think even Linda mentioned it, I can't remember, but we just wanted to do our version of a Beatles song. And Imagine by John Lennon, and not sonically, because we didn't have that kind of song, but just wanted to walk away from the experience feeling that we had done something remotely close to that. And when you have people like that everybody in the room was creative. The interesting thing about that, can I bring something up?
Please.
When Christina first cut the song, she cut it to, Linda had written that song quite a few years earlier. It was, I think, probably for her second solo album. Linda was with a group called Four Non Blondes back in the early part of the 90s, I believe. Then she went solo, and so she had a couple of songs for that album that never came out. And the drums were programmed because it was a demo. And when Christina sung it, she'd heard the demo a million times, but she was holding a piece of paper reading the lyrics when she did that demo, and that's the vocal on the album. And the interesting thing was that demo she sang to, the programmed drums went start to finish. Well, when we replaced the programmed drums with live drums, her headphone bleed had the programmed drums in it after the live drums stopped.
Oh, man.
And BuzzFeed recently called that one of the 5 greatest mistakes ever in a pop mix, and it was intentional. I talked to Christina and Ron Fair and Linda, and I was like, the song's about who you are is beautiful. Let's just leave it. It's kind of cool. Sure. We'll get a lot of flack, but it'll be fun. Right. And so teachers taught it in school, they taught that as a mistake and everything. And I let that go out like that for about 7 or 8 years. And then I did an interview and said it was intentional and this is why I did it. And BuzzFeed actually put my quote in there about it. So they were a bit hypocritical because they knew it was intentional, it was a mistake. But I always thought that was a neat thing because when you and I were kids, we'd sit there and we were just as concerned with how they did something as we were with what they did. So, sure. So you probably disconnected one of your mom's speakers so you could hear only the left side where George Harrison's waiting to do his guitar parts. And you can hear him breathing in that speaker, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
I love those little warts. And that was a wart that I thought just gave it some character.
We were texting the other day about Sgt. Pepper's because I was trying to reference a sound off it, and I was trying to figure out what verbs they were using and everything, and you know, do the thing where you put it through the console, you flip them back, you put both channels mono, mess around with the phase, and see if you can isolate the verb if the vocal's coming down the middle. And I'm sitting there, I put headphones on, and on Lovely Rita, there's this extra background that comes in, but it's only the reverb, and it's slightly out of time, and I'd never noticed it before.
Wow. Yeah, you texted me about that, didn't you?
Yeah, and we're still fans of music.
I don't know if this is applicable, but a lot of the Abbey Road stuff, they automatically had bandpass filters, like they'd roll everything below 500 or 600 off and everything above probably 4K off. So you got this real narrow band of reverb that when you say it, you intuitively think, well, that couldn't sound that good, but that's what they did.
I didn't know that.
I don't know how many.
It's a great tip.
I don't know how many. In fact, I showed on my show how to do that, but I also dipped a little bit of the mid-range out, and I like that too.
Right.
It's not universally good for everything, but it's fun to try it, you know.
Oh, I love all that stuff. So I think a big part of my personal belief why you are so good at what you do is because of your musical journey and everything you bring to it. Now you have an very heavy arts-based background. You and I have chatted on and off camera about art and literature, and we share all that. My father's a painter. You know, you come from musicians and art yourself, and I think that's a huge part of it. I'd love people to know a little bit more about your musical journey pre-mixing.
Okay. Before I say that, you don't have to have these backgrounds to be successful starting out. The point that Warren's making is just bring who you are and your journeys and your experiences into whatever you're doing, whether it's making a cup of coffee or doing a mix. My musical journey, I came from a very musical environment, a very musical culture, and a gifted family. And music was never absent in my life. We had music for funerals, music for weddings, music for when we were sad, music for when we were bored, music for when we were happy. Everything in my life revolved around music. My mother's named after an opera, the opera Aida.
Your mother's name's Aida? I didn't know that.
And so I got exposed to a lot of opera, a lot of, Dad loved the tenors, so he loved Mario Lanza, he loved a lot of the Italians, the more pop guys. There was always music in my house, always music. I don't remember not having multiple things to play music on. Dad was pretty gifted in electronics, and so he always had various recording devices, and from a very young age, 5 or 6 years old, I was trying to modify them to make them better. And of course, I just ruined them, but he had the patience to help me fix them again. And then Mom was pretty gifted on guitar. She had a gift for guitar. So you'd think that I had every advantage life could offer, except I want to be a basketball player.
I don't know if anybody's ever actually seen Dave stand up, but I'm 6 foot. You're like 4 inches taller than me, 5 inches?
6'4", yeah.
6'4", so.
But I think that's normal. I think
we have the chair. His chair's a little lower than mine, so he doesn't look like he's that much taller.
But you know, it's sad that at the time in life, in fact, it's ironic, when you need to make your most important decisions, you emotionally and mentally have the worst tools ever in your life to make those decisions. Absolutely. And
we go through that with our kids, don't we?
Yeah, I was heavily seduced by music. I was heavily seduced by basketball and all sports. And then probably the crossroad that was the most difficult to navigate was photography. Mom was a pretty good painter, and Dad had great drawing skills, and both my parents were somewhat ambidextrous. And Mom came to me, I guess I was about 12, and she said, "Man, your drawing skills just aren't adequate, so you're not going to be a great artist. But here's a camera, because your ideas are good, so this removes the need for drawing, right? You can use your same ideas, but instead of drawing them, you photograph them." And then, so I started doing, just like a kid, taking photographs of my little model cars and airplanes and stuff, and I'd pose them, and just doing little artsy things that I thought were cool, and that evolved into a profession and a career. I was making as much money off photography as I was music, and had some success, some shows, one-man shows and stuff. And like you and I compose our mix visually. Like I spent most of my life on stage, so I compose it from being on stage. So I like my hi-hat on the left. I like, except I play with a lot of left-handed drummers, but I like my hi-hat on the left. I like to arrange the stage like the bands I used to play in. It just gives me a good feeling. I don't know if it helps in any way, but I think you have to have at least
You're connecting to it.
Yeah. And so I chose music eventually, and then then I had to choose what I was going to do about college, and that was an easy choice because I've always been curious about the world around me, and I felt like I didn't really have a grasp on a lot of the processes that I would notice in nature, like why do clouds do this? Why they look that way? What is this rock? So I continued that curiosity through college, knowing I probably wouldn't ever use any of it. But turns out you do,
Yeah.
The tenacity it takes to finish a course in college is similar to finishing a mix, because a mix, you start off with great intentions and you love everything about the song. At some point you hate it and just want it done. And then at some point you go past that and you go, wow, this is pretty good. I like this now. And you go through all these emotions when you're mixing. And so college was a good thing for that. And I've been playing, probably since, don't laugh, but I guess probably since I was 6 years old, I've been playing, let's say performing in front of people. And I do miss that to this day, that instant gratification of you play something for an audience, you get response. Some of my mixes, like more recently, like say, Love Never Felt So Good, the Michael Jackson song, that was a year before I heard anything about the mix except from the record company, And
Oh, wow.
so who wants to wait a year for that kind of...
That's definitely not instant gratification.
Well, that's what I love about the internet. You can put something on at 10 o'clock and you've got responses by 11, And, Bruce Swedien, he said several times in print, a good engineer should attend live shows, because not necessarily to know what to copy in terms of sound, but to just have that experience of a live performance and then go into your little cave and generate that experience is a good, healthy thing. And I think that's a big part of what I do. Is I still try to entertain people with what comes out of the speakers.
I agree. I love your philosophy, and it's good to talk about this because we get so caught up in the technical. I know everybody wants to know the technical stuff, but I think what you're pointing to, and I love, is bringing a wealth of your experience and who you are to your musical experience.
Have to do that, and everybody's got those.
Yeah, and you're right. And as prefacing it, it doesn't matter if you came from, yes, my father's a painter, but my father loved music. I grew up playing classical and jazz, and we heard loads of Verdi and Puccini like you did as well, and that's great, but that isn't why I do music. There's nobody else in my family that does music. I don't have a brother who plays or a sister. My dad didn't play, my mum doesn't play. They did art. So I don't think it's in, like you were pointing out, you don't have to come from a musical background to do music, but you do have to, I do firmly believe you have to be able to bring yourself and your passion and your enthusiasm and love of music to what you do, or it is purely technical.
Yeah,
and the difference is when
300%.
I had you mixed that song for me, you could feel the difference. I heard drum sounds slightly evolve and build and become more exciting. And yes, maybe it's only guys like us that can notice the subtle things that you did.
But you can feel it.
But you can feel it, and the listener is on with 4 instruments, a vocal, and some backgrounds. You could hear it developing, and that is a skill that goes beyond which plugin do you use. It goes beyond. It's probably. And correct me if I'm wrong. You can explain this much better than I can because you really are truly what we call an A-list mixer. There's half a dozen of you guys around.
You hear that? Okay, just checking.
Look, we all survive in labels, and you hear that term. We don't talk about it on camera. They go, oh, he's an A-list guy. You're in a handful of guys. Yeah. And the thing about
I'm more comfortable as the underdog, by the way. So
yeah. Well, I know emotionally you like to push yourself.
Yeah.
That's why your work is superb, because you're always pushing and you're trying to develop. I mean, here you are. You're not 21, but you use all of the best and latest plugins, and you understand them. People come to you to go, what plugin is that? I mean, isn't that supposed to be the priority of an 18-year-old kid in his bedroom?
Well,
you're as cutting edge as it can get when it comes to using the latest technology.
I think I am. I try to be, because I enjoy it, but there's also a darker thread that runs through that attempt. When you sound like somebody else, you can be compared to them.
Right.
Like you can compare a quarter pounder to a Whopper, but you can't compare a quarter pounder to a Mario Batali 8-course pasta dinner,
Sure.
So
now I'm hungry.
So, and by the way, food metaphors do hold up pretty well in music. I use them a lot. But so as you're starting out, try to be different and try to learn how to accept rejection, because rejection can mean you just truly aren't gifted and suck and should change careers. But it can also just as easily and more likely mean that you're pushing a little harder than the status quo.
Absolutely.
And you're scaring a lot of people, and that's a good thing. So so rejection is something I've had to learn. Thank goodness I don't get rejected a lot. But when it does happen,
I love what you just said there. That should be like framed, because that's definitely my journey, and that's a journey for most people. And it's difficult for people coming up in this business to deal with, because if it happens like 20 times, which is probably a low number.
Especially if you're trying to support yourself with this profession, it's the temptation to go the opposite direction and sound like other people it's hard to overcome that.
I think we talked about this before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I believe that Segovia said that all of his best students gave up. Now, Andres Segovia was
great classical guitar player,
probably the grandfather of modern classical guitar. He brought it back.
The
Eddie
Van Halen of classical guitar.
Absolutely. Well, probably the Eddie Van Halen of guitar playing.
Yeah.
I mean, of just the guy from guitar playing.
He played with the same power. Even though he had an acoustic nylon string guitar, he still played with the same power.
What I love about him saying that was like he taught all of the current amazing classical guitar players.
Yeah.
And he's just saying, but all the good ones gave up. What a lot of people don't know about you is you're an amazing guitar player. You play guitar on. Tell people a little bit about your journey as a guitar player.
Well, I'm not being flippant nor trying to be funny. Sometimes I think of myself as a failed guitar player as opposed to a successful mixer. It was so hard, and I still struggle with transitioning from being a guitar player to being a musician. And then the other things you struggle with is being a musician transitioning to being an engineer. And in my culture, which is Spain, you are what you do. So you're introduced as David Rodriguez, the cigar maker, Frank Pensado, the chemist, Dave Pensado, the guitar player, Dave Pensado, the mix engineer. And so your sense of who you are and your sense of well-being is defined by your profession. Much like in the Renaissance, it was Leandro the blacksmith, or whatever. And transitioning from one of those to another has been difficult for me. I'm not blessed with the ability to do more than one thing at a time. So I can't be a guitar player, a musician, and an engineer. And you're saying, well, guitar players are musicians, and musicians are doing music with the engineer. It's just not that way for me. I wish I had that gift to do all those things simultaneously, but
you bring that wealth of experience to it.
I think so, but also too, you show me somebody that's got two professions, and I'll show you somebody that's probably not going to hit the top of the heap in their profession, in either one. Vincent van Gogh, in a collection of letters to his brother Theo, which is a great book to read.
It's a wonderful book.
He said, the way you master many things is to first master one. He also said, this is almost a direct quote, he said, one should never trust the time one is without difficulties. Conflict and creativity are brothers and sisters. They need each other.
I agree.
Show me a happy person, I'll show you a guy that's not very creative.
I agree. That's beautiful. Cool.
But I want to go back a little bit.
Please.
If you're starting out as a young engineer, try to be the best you can be. Don't try to be me or Warren or anybody, because then that's going to retard your growth. And the happiest day of my engineering career, and probably always will be forever and ever and ever, is when I got that first phone call to do a mix, and that phone call did not start this way. Dave, I'd love you to do this mix. Can you make it sound like? And then they name the hot dog engineers. That I can't express to you how angry that would make me. I wanted somebody to hire me for me,
sure,
but I knew full well that I didn't have the skills to be paid for anything, and I was getting rejected for free stuff. That's how bad I was when I first started. And man, when somebody hired me to be me, that was just the greatest day of my life. I mean, you can put little footnotes there, like when my kid was born or when I got married, all that. No, that was the greatest day. That was just. I might not be here to see all those other things had that not happened. I was getting a little depressed. That was a wonderful moment. And how do you get that moment? Well, by being the best you can be. Like if you try to be the best man American you can be, you'll only be a copy. You'll never be the best. The first is what you always want to be, and the only way you can be the first at anything in the engineering world is to be yourself. And once you do that, then you've got something that has value to people, because that uniqueness will have value. But
now, would you subscribe if I surmise, and you can correct me?
Mm-hmm.
My belief is that in all of our journeys to get to be quote unquote, successful, or at least being paid for what we do, we have to go through learning our techniques. We have to go through understanding, whether it be, the DAWs, understanding the tools that we have, so we don't have to rely on them anymore. So it's kind of a process of learning. Because I think you would subscribe to that?
100%. If you're thinking about what you're doing, you're not very effective. You have to sit there at a console and spend an hour EQing something and forget that you touched the knobs. Or I've been using a trackball for 20 years, so I don't even think about it. I do a lot of rides with the trackball, so I don't use a fader a lot of times, because I don't even think about the rides. I just think about where I want to hear it, and then next thing I know, it's done. To give you a metaphor, think about being a Formula One driver, and you're going around the course at 200 miles an hour. Are you thinking, okay, look, I need to downshift from third to second, and I need to put in the clutch before I do that, let off the gas, push this little lever up, or flip these little paddles, and by that time you've overrun the road course, and you're dead, because you can't think. You have to react in split seconds.
Oh, that's right.
And you don't even remember all those reactions, because they come from a different spot. And I think creativity is the same way. Going back to Van Gogh, did he sit there and go, okay, I'm going to take this cobalt and this burnt umber, and I'm going to mix them with a little linseed oil from France? Oh no, I can't use linseed oil from France. I'm gonna use German linseed oil, because that's analog and I like it. And then I'm gonna mix it and get this green, and then so he paints this green, and then a critic comes along and goes, I'd love this painting, except the burnt umber is just not right. The ratio of the red and the yellow and the blue is just producing a shade of green that's just not authentic to me. No, you don't want to think about the process, and then you don't want to make the process the focal point. The process is all subservient to the result, and the result is an artist that's helped the most to be the best sounding artist they can be, and create the most sales, and create the most emotion and energy and following, and have most people show up to his concerts or her concerts. That's the point. I can very easily lapse into worshiping all the gear. I love gear. You love gear.
Absolutely. There's
something seductive about having gear that begins with the letter N, the letter U. There's just something right about it, and we do kind of worship it sometimes.
I think sometimes as engineers we get a little superstitious as well. I have an old Cadet console, and I remember it has all the lights to control, talking to the studio and stuff like that. But of course, they're all disconnected because I don't use it. It's not a central piece of my control room anymore. But I always joke, when the green light's on, I was like, if this song's a massive hit, that green light's going to stay on forever, even though it's not connected to any audio path.
Is that shown true?
I always make sure the green light's on,
Oh, okay.
But you know what I mean? It's that sort of, hockey players always wearing the same underwear or something like that. I think that there's...
Whoa. That's not right. I have to change. I didn't know that.
Don't they have like that lucky underwear if they win a game, if they win 3 games and they wore the same piece of underwear? So I think that And that's just a human condition. Yes, we're right. We do love our gear.
As you're aging, do you get more superstitious? I mean, I've got science backgrounds, and I find myself getting more superstitious lately in the last 10 years.
Probably, I think it's yes. I think it's a result of as I get older, I want my life to be simpler because I have enough things to deal with family and children and schools and mortgages and businesses and employees and stuff like that. I think the superstition plays very well into like keeping it simple.
Yeah, that's true.
And so probably yes, I would agree with you. But half the time I think it's like, I put my keys here, I want them to be there the next day. I need this to be like this because I am dealing with so many things, just outside of work, just family and commitments. Keep my life simple, please.
Yeah, I like that. I like simple.
And I think the analogies you're using now is the modern version of the Malcolm Gladwell where he talks about the 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
You just explained that you were a great guitar player, and I know you were, and you were very successful, and you could have easily gone off and made that.
I practiced so much.
So you took, and I believe this very firmly, and this doesn't matter, I think this is good for anybody if they're at college at the moment and music is their love, but they're doing, I don't know, medicine or not even something as grandiose. They're very passionate about learning. They can take that ability to learn and apply it to something else, because that is a skill in itself, the ability to take in information and process it and get better. So what you did is you took guitar playing and you became an incredible guitar player, and you took all of that and you just moved it slightly to the right or to the left into something else. I love when you told me the other day on the phone about the police. Can you share that little story?
Sure. I filled in for a sound man who had gotten sick, and I'm pretty sure the band was the Police, and nobody knew who they were at the time. And a couple people owned one of the studios in Atlanta were there, and they liked it. They liked what they heard and offered me a job.
But this was a live show. You were doing front of house.
Yeah, live show, yeah.
So you stood in because...
It wasn't a big room. It was like 2,000 seats or something.
That's still fantastic.
But when you're a musician, you have to have other skills to survive, you know? And so I learned a lot about live sound and did a lot of live sound gigs to make ends meet between bands and record deals and stuff. So it was...
I did the same thing. There was a place in Aldershot called the West End Centre, and I would do live sound there, and play gigs.
It's amazing how many engineer friends we have that had a live sound background. I think it helps to perform in front of people, and I think it helps to do live sound because you get that instant feedback and gratification, and you subconsciously learn how to entertain people, and sometimes it can be very subtle, like you think the lead guitar is loud enough or the lead vocal is loud enough, and you jack it up an extra 2 or 3 dB, and suddenly the crowd is responding, and it's interesting to see what men respond to and what women respond to, and then different age groups respond by the different things you can manipulate and do. But the main thing is you get to see how people respond to sound, and that's really what we do for a living in an odd way. A thought that I failed to mention early in the conversation, which I think is important, is I believe, and this isn't a uniformly held belief, but I believe there's only one type of creativity. So I don't believe that the creativity it takes to make a great meal or the creativity it takes to write a poem or a novel or write a song or do a movie. I think creativity is identical.
I agree. 100%.
It's just the medium in which it's expressed.
Sure.
So when you learn creativity as a guitar player or you learn creativity through touring, you've probably got the heavy lifting of being an engineer already done, because you can take that creativity and manifest it, like I say, in different mediums.
I agree.
And I don't know that I've read that that's scientifically provable, but it sure feels like that. And there's a reason why creative people are drawn together. Like if you think of the 1800s, the Impressionists, like say Debussy, would hang out with, say, Cézanne, a painter and a musician, and they would all hang around and together because they had the same creative goals, and they actually helped each other.
Right.
So that begs the point: if you want to become more creative in music, you can go to the museum as well as you can go to the record store.
Right.
It feels like to me, and you can enhance your creativity by studying different mediums, because sometimes it points out, like a nebulous concept like the rule of thirds. So I've mentioned that before, and I've never explained it because you can't. But I just wanted it to people to use their visual processes to understand the audio processes, and so you can create balance in a mix based on the rule of thirds, but you do it intuitively, and that can come from watching a painting or looking at a painting, and you see how you don't see the entire painting at one time. A great painter draws you around the painting the way he wants your eye to go. Well, we can do the same thing in the mix process. I can draw your attention to the lead vocalist, and then maybe I might draw your attention to a little guitar lick over here, and then draw you back to the singer. And so what does that accomplish? Well, we tend to not like to buy instrumentals, nor do we like to buy a cappellas. So you make sure that the person listening is drawn to the track, gets the groove, gets the feel, and then he's drawn to the singer, and you just take that eye and make it, that ear, and make it go back and forth.
There's something very beautiful about a 3.5 minute pop song when done really, really well. Yeah. It's not just going, the emotion is heavy metal and it goes jigga 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 jigga, and that's valid. That's putting on a pair of headphones and throwing them off and going, oh my God, I'm so whatever. What you're saying is you're bringing all of these different things in to make a great song that translate on radio and keeps people's interest. It really is an art form because you're bringing in all of these different things to keep people's interest.
I'm not comfortable with that because
you're calling it an art form?
Well, I think all art is a combination of craft or you could say technical skills, but that's a craft skill.
Sure.
And artistic skills. So we celebrate great painters because the art is 90%, the craft is 10%. Sure. I do think there's some art in what we do, but I think it's probably reversed, maybe 10% art and 90% craft. But there's nothing wrong with being proficient at your craft.
Right.
And you can take craft into the areas and realms of art. Without craft, there is no art.
Right.
You can tell that by looking at most of the art out of New York right now. They're intellectual exercises. It's not truly art. But
right.
I agree with what you're saying. I'm a little uncomfortable being in the same sentence with great artists, but there is art into what we do.
Yeah, I think.
And by the way, I know you didn't say this, but when I listen to Joe Barresi or Jason Sukoff, their heavy metal work, I wish I could do that.
I agree.
And you're the same way.
Yeah, I was just talking about because there is great. I mean, when you were interviewing me, we talked about the Stooges for a second.
Yeah.
Like how when that guitar part came in, it was far too loud, and it screamed emotion.
Yeah.
And I don't think sometimes great art is, whether it be music or not, it's just one emotion performed and presented in a way that's so unique.
Why do you think it is that all the records we love, we talk about the warts, but when we sit down to make a record, we try to get rid of all the warts? Why do you think we do that? It happens all the time with me. All my favorite records had not a mistake, but something that's not traditionally correct, and that's the part I loved. But when I go to mix, I try to homogenize things too much sometimes, not all the time.
But my experience is being the end user and actually experiencing you mixing stuff I've recorded. I don't feel that way at all because I felt like
you do have a tendency to do that.
Oh no, I mean
I do anyway.
Do you feel like that's outside influences though sometimes?
Well, I think whenever you get too far away from your influences, you get in emotionally scared territory because you have to think and be unique, and that's not as much fun. Our brain is designed for repetition and for sticking with things we know. Like it's kind of important to know what a tiger looks like that wants to eat you, and so you don't want to improvise on that too much if you're living in an area where tigers eat you, and the creative process, when you get too far away from the demo or you get too far away from your influences, you're in uncharted territory, and our brains are not constructed to do that well, and you have to practice it, and you have to be comfortable doing that, and no matter who you are, you struggle with that sometimes, but that's what keeps you going. Those moments in that territory and living for those moments are what keep you trying to do the next mix, keep you trying to get better, and keep you trying to grow within the framework of your influences and tastes. By the way, a little trick is, for you guys coming up, if you've got influences, like let's say you love Stevie Ray Vaughan, well, don't emulate Stevie Ray Vaughan. Do some research and see who his influences were, and then emulate those. And now, not only are you not Stevie Ray Vaughan, but you're a version of yourself being influenced by the people that influenced him. So it's much easier to assimilate those influences in a unique way and manifest them in a unique way than it is to be another Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I agree.
Neat little trick.
To me, to take everything that you've been saying, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to surmise, there's so much incredible stuff you're talking about here, but it's that ability to learn. I think that if we can learn, we can, and really soak that information in, we can take that skill and apply it to different areas in our life. So, so like you were saying right at the beginning, you don't necessarily have to come up in a musical background.
No.
But if you love music, and plenty of our friends that are successful weren't musicians. They were assistants, or they were just people that loved being around it, and now they're successful, engineers and producers and mixers in their own right. And they weren't actually musicians. But do I believe that now if you want to be successful, it's a big part of what you should do? I do. I think if I was 21 now, or, starting up, I would say if you're an engineer, learn an instrument. I really do believe that, because only because of the nature of our business that now it's like people come to a guy and they go, can you help me write my song? Can you help me produce it? Can you engineer it? Can you mix it? Do you know anybody I can play it to? I don't think it's so much of a jack of all trades. I think it's more of because of the technology that's available now, the DAWs, etc. It's easier to get in there. It wasn't, when you and I were kids, you go into a studio that cost minimum $1,000, $1,500 a day. Now that technology is available on your laptop and a couple $100.
I think that's a wonderful thing.
Do you believe that people should educate themselves outside of just engineering if they want to be successful?
100%. I'll expand it. And I would just say, there's some days when we wake up as humans and we don't really feel connected to the real world. We just kind of float through it, almost like an ephemeral kind of little ghost or something. And the days that are worth living are the ones where you're truly connected to the world. And sometimes when I don't get enough sleep, I drive to work, don't remember a lot of it. And then on some days you drive to work and it's just the most amazing journey ever. I went through Fog Bank 2 days ago. It was clear sky, blue clear sky. All of a sudden I'm in a fog bank. It was just the greatest moment ever. And then to get to my house, I had to go up side of a mountain. Now I'm looking down on the same fog bank I just went under. So I saw it from both sides. Just a wonderful moment.
Beautiful.
And I think that to expand on what you're saying and agree 100% with, I think just an innate curiosity about everything around you can only lead to good results, because when we sit down as creative people, if we don't have experiences to draw from, then that creativity can't convert those into taste, and taste is what we're really selling. So 100%, I agree with that sentence completely. The only thing is, I would say, sometimes you can get tunnel vision with your creativity, and I don't think that produces the results you're looking for as much as if you broaden it a little bit. So, for example, if you grew up only listening to hip hop, that's a great, incredible thing to do. But widen gradually your both sides. Like try and see what some of the classical guys did on this side. Try and see what some of the rock guys and pop guys did on this side. And now you can bring more influences into that. Absolutely. And that can only produce good results. So that curiosity to learn everything you can about music is a wonderful thing. Now, if you don't know music and you want to be an engineer, there are some disadvantages. One, it's a little more difficult to communicate with other musicians, and that's what engineers do. We communicate with musicians. So something as simple as if he says to go to bar 4, you got to know where bar 4 is. Now that's
Sure.
pretty fundamental, but at some point you don't know what a bar is, and at some point you're not gonna know tuning. You're not gonna a good engineer provides a lot of services for the client beyond just engineering. You like much like a barber, you go to get your hair cut, but he might trim some nose hairs. He might do some other things, trim your beard or whatever. And in today's world, an engineer needs to be ready to set up all sorts of keyboards, to know all sorts of things, not just how to engineer, how to like, I can't tell you the number of times during a session somebody will ask me to throw up a vocal mic. Well, you need to have all of those kind of skills, and the more skills you have, the more likely you are to find one of those skills that leads to a pathway that leads to your success. So, for example, we all know a million people that got their start, like you, in a way, by just being really talented, and your opportunity came, you took advantage of that opportunity, and now you have success. If you had not had the skills when that opportunity presented itself, it would have fleeted away, and it wouldn't be called an opportunity then. You wouldn't even remember it. But you have to know a lot of different things, and the more you know, the more value you have to the person that's hiring you. And another thing that drives me nuts, I don't know if I can articulate this, but passion is overrated. When somebody comes to me and says, "Man, I'm just so passionate about music," I go, "Why you tell me that?" Passion has very little to do with what we do. Passion is something you use for a hobby. Passion is something that you use as an excuse to spend money that you don't have. Passion is not something that gets you through for 5 straight days with no sleep. That's a function of lifestyle. If you inherently aren't an engineer, then the passion's not going to help. Passion is I don't even know what that means anymore. Everybody has a passion for something, but that doesn't mean that should be your occupation. Let's say I'm 4'11" and I have a passion to play pro basketball. That's not going to help me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So passion is something that you have to be careful about how you manifest that passion in your life. Like we all have passions, but some of mine are just hobbies. I have a passion for fishing, but I don't want to start a fishing charter business.
Right.
So be careful with this passion thing, because I'm hearing that a lot, and it's driving me nuts. The other thing is commitment. If you can't commit, whether it be, I don't like living in Panorama City. I just, well, get off your lazy ass and move to Nashville, or move to Los Angeles, move where the music is, and commit. The worst thing that can happen is you move back home. Right. The second worst thing that can happen is you run out of money and move back home. But until you commit, nothing good can follow. The way the world and the universe is constructed on a metaphysical level is, until you commit, nothing good can happen. So if you're mixing and you've given me all these background vocals, once I committed to knowing what I wanted them to do and just committed to it, commit hardcore, print them, 2 tracks and commit, now all sorts of great things can happen. And the worst that can happen is I might have to reprint them a different way if you didn't like it, but that's okay. When you have to commit on everything from creativity. It's a quote attributed to Goethe, the famous philosopher, but I think it was actually found out that it was somebody else. But the essence of that quote is what I'm saying, and I think it's so true. And I see so many people so hesitant, and it just hurts my heart, because if they just commit.
Sure.
Now, I committed to start my career in England. It didn't work out. It didn't produce the results I wanted. So I went back to Atlanta, and I said, okay, I'm going to L.A. I made the commitment. Next day, I'm on the road to L.A. Kind of worked out. I'm still here. So on every level of creativity and the physical parts of your life, commit. Don't sit there going, if only I could go to school. Just go to school. Now, all parents, you can leave the room. But just commit. If you want to go to a school, go to the school. Just get there, get in the town, figure out something, and good things will happen. If you look at successful people, the path from starting out to the success is never linear. Steve Jobs started out as a computer company, and Apple became the largest company in the world as a phone company. They're not a computer company, they're a telephone making company. And on and on and on and on and on. You have to be able to make a right-hand turn, and that's the beauty of commitment. It forces you to make those turns in those journeys, because otherwise you'll go this linear path which never produces results for successful people. I started out as a guitar player. Then I thought I was going to be a scientist, and I thought I was going to be this, and I'm an engineer. Had I not started in that path, I wouldn't have had that one opportunity that gave me that. So commitment is probably be careful with the word passion and commitment. Those are the two greatest assets you can have to become successful.
I agree entirely. Exactly. It just reinforces.
Can you tell the Jack Douglas story one more time? Because that's commitment.
I think when you interview Jack, which I'm sure is going to come up soon, you should ask him. I want him to be the one that tells it. You can find it on the internet for anybody that wants to know.
Can I just paraphrase it real quick?
Paraphrase it?
Yeah.
The story of the rat?
No. The story of this man committed to get on a boat and go to another country.
Oh, the Liverpool one. I'll tell the Liverpool one.
Okay.
This
is commitment.
He and his friend were musicians, and he really, really wanted to meet the Beatles. And I believe he was a teenager, so he stowed away on a ship. And we're talking
from Brooklyn to Liverpool.
Yeah, we're talking 60s, and we're talking, when ships were ships. And it was a cargo vessel. So it was probably, I'm guessing, like 20 crew maybe. I don't know what you...
less than that.
Yeah, maybe less than that, on a massive cargo ship. And they stowed away, and I don't know, maybe halfway across between New York and Liverpool, they get discovered. They probably brought some snacks and stuff and underestimated the length of the journey.
10-day, 12-day journey.
Yeah, they probably came out after 5 days starving, and were like, he can elaborate.
Commitment. That's commitment.
And so to cut a long story short, when they got to Liverpool, they wouldn't let them into the country. But I don't know how it happened. He can explain this, but somehow or another, the local paper, the Liverpool, whatever it is, Post, Inquirer, Times, whatever it is, found out about it. And you can find it online. There's a photograph of Jack and his friend, and they actually have a Les Paul, a 3-pickup Black Beauty with them. They brought with them, probably thinking, as a teenager, we're going to meet the Beatles and we're going to jam with them, the stuff that we do.
That's so great.
When we're kids, And I think it was Liverpool Echo, found the kids, managed to get some kind of like 3-day pass or whatever it was so they could go down to the cavern. Of course, the Beatles at this stage were probably living in London and recording, so they weren't in Liverpool, but they took them to the cavern and they got to hang out and see it, and then put them back on the boat and went back again. The best part of the story, I know you know this part of the story, is in the late 60s, early 70s, whenever it was, he was working at the record plant, I believe. And
this Jack Douglas working
Jack Douglas was working in there as like the tape op. And he's sitting in a room like this, doing dupe copies of tapes, taking the reels and making copies of it and doing basic edits, putting the leader tape. I'm sure you did all that yourself as well. Putting in leader tape between takes, final masters before sending off to being mastered, final mixes before they were going mastered. And he said, the door opens and John Lennon's there. And he's like, John Lennon's there. And John Lennon says, oh, would you... And he had got like, I don't remember what it was, I wish I knew specifically, but probably like the demos, like 8-track demos or, 1/2-inch, 1/4-inch tapes, and said, would you do me a favor? Can you, mix these down so I can hear them, probably onto cassette or something? Just copy them onto cassette for me. And he's like, okay. And then he just sat behind him and waited for him to do it.
That never happens.
Yeah. And so he sat behind him and he said it was, not awkward, but, he didn't know what to say. And he said after like doing a few, he turned around to John Lennon and sheepishly said, I've been to Liverpool. And John Lennon's like, you have? He's like, yeah, back in the, 60, whatever year it was, me and my friend stowed away on a ship and, to meet you guys in Liverpool. And he said that John Lennon just burst into laughter. He's like, you were those crazy kids. We were sitting in London, like reading the local paper, going, look at those idiots coming all the way over, and oh my God. And he's like, you should come in my session. And just grabs him by the hand or whatever, metaphorically, grabs him and pulls him into the session. And Jack's like, being dragged into a recording session, and everybody in the room's looking at him like, what are you doing in here? You're like the tape op. And John Lennon's like, you should come in, hang out, assist us, be involved. And that was, I suppose, basically the big break.
Yeah, he later did a lot of records, made a lot of money off the Beatles. That's commitment. That's commitment.
He
That's
produced Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey.
And got 4 points on that, too.
Got 4 points on it.
So that's what commitment can do. If he'd have stayed in Brooklyn and not made the commitment, you never know where it's going to end, but you've got to do two things. You got to commit, and you got to always be looking for opportunities once you start that commitment, because it's never going to end up like you think it is it?
I know, and it's weird. I feel like we don't understand this stuff until we understand this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like like when you were saying you went to England, but it didn't happen there. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but he went to England, and he probably picked up so much.
I mean, I made that decision 2 days before I went. I mean, the California decision I made that night before, and next day I'm on the road. Commitment's the best thing a creative person can have is any person commit.
Yeah, it comes out a lot. I find doing interviews, because if you're a mixer, you're receiving 192 tracks of what are they trying to tell me here? They've got 16 guitar parts, which definitely don't work at the same time. So am I now producing it by sitting there and figuring out which parts to use? And I know that you've done many, many songs where you've created loops. And you've done additional production to make sure that this song is absolutely fantastic and the best it can be.
Yeah, I think a service that an engineer should provide for the producer and the artist is to give them more ideas than they need, and then let them choose the best, because ultimately they have the vision that they can slot all these ideas into. And I like giving my clients, you could call it production ideas. I'm not a producer, nor do I ever want credit for producing. I'm a mix engineer. But part of my job is to give you ideas. That could be called producing, but it's not. It's just generating ideas for you to choose from. And in a perfect world, those ideas will generate a new idea in the producer's head, and we'll end up with something better than either one of us. Absolutely. That's happened to me so many times.
I can believe it.
A lot of parts on records people remember of mine started that way.
What I love is, see, in England we have this saying called a job's worth. Does that translate to America?
No.
It's the person that you hire to do something, and they do just exactly what you hired them to do, and we call them a job's worth.
Don't ever do that. Don't ever, on any level. If you're a janitor, be the best janitor
be the best janitor you can.
If you're a president, be the best president you can be.
I'm sure when you were engineering in Atlanta, and I just, knowing your personality and knowing your abilities and your talents, I'm sure there was many times as an engineer, I did the quote, see, you were also producing. But you didn't have any resentment because you were sitting in there giving guitar ideas to the guitar player. You just wanted the best possible results.
Well, you know what? I'm guessing you and I are the same. I just wanted to be a part of the record-making process. I just wanted to make records. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what that entailed. I didn't know the names for the positions. I just knew when I heard those records on the radio, I wanted to be a part of that somehow, some way. And I always thought my part and contributions were going to be as a musician, but I'm happy that it's as an engineer, because I really get to inflict my taste on everything now. And I like that, and I'm not dictatorial about it. I expect to have you say, I don't know. And that's cool. I like that, because and the client likes it, because at least they know I care. I want this to be better, and I want it to be better in the context of what you think is better, not what I think is better. I can't go into your closet, or I can't go to Macy's and buy clothes for you. I could get a few things right. If you like tidy whities, I'd get that right. But you can't go into somebody's mix and dress it up. I mean, that's just not possible, but I can give you a lot of ideas for you to choose from. And then I've never been shy about an opinion. So if you want to know my opinion, I'll definitely tell you. But I like that. I like that way of working. It seems right. It seems like the way musicians should work together, you know?
I agree. Yeah, it's proper collaboration.
Yeah.
It's taking that idea of when we were in bands.
Yeah, and just like people we played with, some people you'd play with and you played better, and some people you played with and you played worse. And I think a good engineer should make everybody in the room better and more comfortable, and provide a safety net so you can just go do crazy things, you know, and experiment. And you might throw them all in the trash, but that's the fun of doing it, you know?
One thing I was thinking about the other day was when I lived in the north of England, I did the same kind of crazy thing you did. I just kind of upped and left. My parents moved west, I went north, and I ended up playing in club bands. And, you know, we talked about doing that and just learning covers and, you know, tuning my ear into chord sequences and melodies by great writers, you know, things like, if I just sat out at my home and played my, you know, GCD songs, maybe I would have eventually written a good one, but there's nothing better than playing, you know, Bacharach songs.
By the way,
mixed in
it's GCD, not GDC, but in America. But go ahead.
And yeah, so, you know, it's that ability to absorb information from outside sources and has been really invaluable. But like we were just mentioning a few minutes ago, you don't identify or understand it until you do. You might be looking back 20 years and going, oh, that's why my journey and all this kind of stuff, you know. I didn't know I had mentors until about a year ago. Now I talk about mentors all the time.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
I'm not a big fan of that word. I just had a lot of people that just gave me time I didn't deserve to get. I mean, I don't think Ed C. was trying to mentor me. He just saw something in me I didn't see in myself and spent a lot of time.
I don't think you're comfortable with that because you are a mentor to so many people, but you don't want to be thought of like that. You just do it and absorb it. But I think it's okay for us to go, you're mentoring somebody.
Maybe so. I have a fear of people taking things I say and try to implement them literally in their lives, and that can never work. You have to filter. Well, first of all, there's a big distinction between opinions and advice. You get advice from your parents and the clergy and other people in your life. You get opinions from me, and a prudent person takes those opinions and gets an opinion from Warren, an opinion from Connor and Leandro. So you get many opinions, and you formulate the advice for yourself, and you filter it through your sensibilities. Me personally, I really like what Jack Douglas did. I'm just not interested in spending 10 days on a ship. So you don't go get on a ship and go to Liverpool. Use that opinion and filter it through your own sensibilities. If you want to be a sailor and you live in Kansas, you might want to think about going somewhere where there's water. You know what I'm saying? So commit to that and do that. It's not. That's the point of all of this. I get scared a lot of times because I can say things like I really mean it, and I do, but that doesn't mean it's right for you, even though it was right. My pathway to success, I didn't even want my own daughter to take that path. I mean, that's how bad it was. Too much randomness in my life.
My father was the same way. He said, don't be an artist. He tried to stop me from going to art college.
But my kid, boy, she'll commit in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
No, is she in medicine? Is that
No,
right?
she's in culinary.
Culinary,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Look, we could do this. I could personally talk to you for about 3 months. And
we have it on occasion.
Yes,
but,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. It's a lot of my thoughts I just make up on the spot. A lot of them I've thought about for a long periods of time. But the neat thing about talking with someone like yourself is it gives me an opportunity to organize those thoughts into something meaningful for myself. So I probably get more out of this than anybody watching it, because it does force you to kind of organize your thoughts in a way that has value to me and a little tiny bitty value to you guys. But yeah, I thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, this has been very
And by the
invaluable.
way, it's humbling to get compliments from you, because I don't think most people are comfortable with compliments. I'm not. I don't think a lot of people are, and I'm learning that. I haven't mastered rejection yet. Once I get that down, I'll work on compliments. I do know I'm good, though.
Oh no, you're great.
But that's a different concept when I give myself a compliment or when I receive one.
I'll tell one more thing. You're fearless in your mixing style, and
I
you,
am,
you don't
for sure.
good because your mix came back very much more of what I wanted to do, but nothing I would have thought about. And you committed to lots of ideas.
Yeah.
And I've had songs, and I'm sure you've done mix-offs with other people,
Right.
you know, and sometimes it's great when your mix comes back and it's like 10% better than what you sent, and they've extrapolated your ideas and taken them to other areas. And that's a big part of mixing sometimes, especially, I'm sure you get sent stuff all the time where you're like, wow, I just only need to make more of this.
Oh,
What
I
you
hate
did with
that. I hate that. like I didn't mean to cut you off. But
No, please.
a lot of times, especially, I hope this is interpreted correctly, but a lot of times if I get something from Asian engineers, I go, I can't beat this. This is amazing. And then you start, and then you put your personality into it, and then you fall in love with what you did, and you like that. But the worst thing for me is to have a mix that just sounds great, because it's much easier to take a rough mix that doesn't sound good and improve it than one that already sounds good and improve it. And let me ask you a question.
Please.
I felt like I stayed pretty faithful to your rough mix. You didn't feel that? I mean, I felt like I took your rough mix not to another level up, but in another direction, because my instructions from you were to give it a radio feel. You wanted it to go into for lack of a better term, into a more pop direction, which really has no meaning, but I felt like you wanted a broad audience for it.
Exactly.
But I thought I stayed pretty faithful to the rough. Don't hurt my feelings. Just lie if it's not true. But I did stay kind of. I tried to stay to the essence of the rough was amazing. I just took it in a little different direction in terms of.
I mean, from my perspective, and obviously I can't be completely objective, but as objective as I can be, I agree with you. But in a level of what we've just been talking about for the last hour, you kept the spirit of what I was trying to do.
Okay, good.
Because what Daniel is he is what we're starting to call these legacy artists. He's a real artist. He's a guy that we both know will sit down at a piano and your hair stand on end and you're like, wow, what a great singer-songwriter. And that is what he is. So the essence of what I was trying to do, he had made a record previously which didn't get released, and it was covered with cool hip sounds, and it just didn't sound like him. So when he came to me, he was just like, I just want to go back to who I am. And so what I tried to do was make it about the singer and the song. So yes, you took that idea and embellished it.
Oh, cool. Have you ever thought about this? Every day, Monday through Friday, food in the South is just poor people taking very inexpensive types of food and making them taste amazing. And then you come to a restaurant in LA, and that same cuisine is now $50, $60, $100 a plate, and it has nothing to do with Southern food.
Sure.
And the reason I chose that first is because I'm about to say something a lot of people are going to get angry at. But there's different ethnicities, like Mexican food, or food. A lot of the foods from Mexico, when you take them outside of a gifted mother who can cook and make anything taste so amazing at home with very little income, and now you elevate that to a $100 meal. It's not Mexican food. Italian food is not pasta. It's spaghetti. And when you take that to too high a level, unless you're Mario Batali, it's no longer Italian food. It's some kind of hot cuisine or something. I don't know. And there's some forms of music, when you take them to $100 a plate, it's not that kind of music anymore, like blues or certain things. And the temptation with the tools we have now is to turn everything into a $100 a plate meal, when really it should just be a lady that has gifts at taking inexpensive cuts of meat and simple vegetables she grows at home and turn that into the greatest meal ever. And that's what our profession's about, doing that. And it's easy to get seduced by all this, and by God, I paid for it. I want to use everything I own on that mix at the same time, you know? And so what you do is you end up, you saw me, you were in here, you know, I probably put 6 or 7 different compressors on Daniel's vocal till we found the right one for the right song. And the next song I mix from Daniel, we'll do the same thing. It'll be a different compressor. But that's the fun of what we do, you know.
Well, the next one has live strings on it. You're going to love it.
Good.
I'm having Oliver Krauss do strings on at the moment.
Oh, that's cool.
It's going to be beautiful.
So I'll turn those into like a $3 quarter pounder.
That's an interesting analogy. I think, again, it plays to your wealth of experience and your understanding. Mm-hmm. And I believe that goes back to what you've been saying the whole time. Bring yourself to this, you know.
Let me be a smart ass for a minute.
Please be a smart ass.
So you take a guitar player that starts out as a blues guitar player. If he practices enough, he becomes a rock guitar player. If he practices way too much, he becomes a jazz guitar player. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't practice at all, he's a folk artist. So
Can we just, I want to put that as a quote.
No, I just made that up.
Oh, it's brilliant.
But just because you practice that much and become a jazz artist doesn't make you a jazz artist, because all creativity is combined with a lifestyle. So if you don't have the lifestyle of a jazz artist, but you practice too much, you're not a jazz artist, buddy. Sure. You're a guitar player that practiced too much. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with everything else, you know. And that's how you can let your passion trick you into thinking you're something you're not.
I love that analogy. I love that. It's great because my favorite jazz guitar player is Joe Pass, and he always used to say,
that's a real jazz player.
That's a real jazz player. And he always used to say it was all about the blues. So.
Yeah. But those old jazz guys, man, they had to be committed to their lifestyle, because it was a tough time in America to be a jazz artist. In fact, all musicians were, if in the 40s, if your daughter told you that she was going to marry a jazz musician, you just kill yourself, because that was nothing lower than musicians back then. I
always love the joke, and how do you make $1 million playing jazz? Start off with $2 million. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up, just because I know you've got work and I'm taking up a lot of your valuable time.
Oh, no trouble.
I really appreciate this. Thank you ever so much.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon.
So please, as ever, leave some comments and questions below, and also your experiences. It's really what Dave is imparting here is really bringing yourself to it, and you know, learning your trade, so that isn't where you're not just relying on the technique of what you do. Just bring yourself to it. So please give us some of your experiences, and love having conversations about this. Thank you ever so much for watching.